Kukhala ndiyedzi sikutha kwa moyo.
HIV today is easily treatable. Yet, for many young people and children, finding out that they are HIV positive can be a frightening experience which they struggle to overcome. So why is this, and what can be done to make it better?
Hi, my name is Danny. I'm 26 years old. I'm a filmmaker and I was also born with HIV. In this film, I want to look at the ways in which young people are told about their status and the impact this can have, both positive and negative, as they grow up.
As I grew up and started to ask questions about the frequent doctor visits and blood tests, I was gradually given answers. I was told I had bugs in my blood that would attack my defences. The medicines would send them to sleep. Only at the end was I told that I had HIV.
I remember it very clearly. I was 11 years old, suddenly everything just made sense. For me, I wasn't frightened because I already had enough knowledge of what HIV is. But sadly, this isn't always the case, either in the UK or in Africa.
This is Innocencia, who lives in Malawi. She first learned about HIV at school, and from overhearing the adults around her, it was something to fear.
HIV kills. That was the only thing that I know by that time. Then once you are found HIV positive, you are dead.
When she was 13, Innocencia started to get sick. She recognised HIV-related symptoms from her school lessons. She also saw her father taking medicine and started to ask him questions.
It's when he was like shouting at me, saying, don't you even dare to say that I'm HIV positive, and don't you even try to find by yourself that if you are HIV positive or not. Because as long as you do that, you are not going to be part and parcel of this family.
Innocencia disobeyed him and went by herself to the clinic, persuading a nurse to test her without her father's permission. The test came back positive.
I was so confused. I couldn't understand what was happening in my body because it was like there was no one who was helping me.
Finding out her status when she had incorrect information about HIV provoked a crisis. Innocencia remembers sitting by a river and planning how to kill herself. Fortunately, her brother found her and convinced her that having HIV does not mean you will die.
The main difference between my experience and Innocencia's was the knowledge that we had growing up. Through a process over time, I was given correct information that was designed to reduce any fear. She, on the other hand, found out suddenly after learning about HIV from school prevention campaigns designed to frighten children into abstaining from sex.
In Malawi, there is a song which a generation of school children have grown up chanting. It is still widely used. AIDS is a killer, and that's why people die. The
evidence all suggests that the way that I found out about my HIV through a learning process over time has much better results. But social science research shows that the way that Innocencia found out, very suddenly and without enough information, is actually much more common.
One of the major challenges that we found is that despite the policy discussion and the focus on disclosure as a process, it remains disclosure as an event. So it's significant, but it's often imbued just into one moment, into one conversation, into one discussion. And we found that happens in the UK and in the US just as much as it happens in Uganda and Zimbabwe. So it's not necessarily a question of resources or time or the burden of the clinical population.
So what is going through the mind of children during this one-off event when they are told that they have the HIV virus inside them? To get an idea, we asked HIV-positive children attending a peer support group to draw images of how they had believed the virus to look at the time that they were told. They drew the things Malawians fear most: Some drew lions, others dangerous animals. Poisonous giant centipedes have an excruciatingly painful bite.
HIV ni nchenche yomwe majama kazi.
HIV is a fly that feeds on our blood. It lives inside us. When we take ARVs, the blood becomes salty and the fly does not like it. HIV
is a snake which lives inside us. It is very dangerous and can bite. But the ARVs take away the poison of the snake.
In a country with deadly cobras and mambas, where children are taught to fear snakes, this was by far the most common image used. It is particularly powerful because snakes are also used to represent evil. A few drew devils, giving an image of being possessed by the virus. Afterwards, they drew how they believed the virus to look now. When interviewed, it was clear that many still believe these images are what the virus really looks like. In some ways, it is not surprising. The word for virus in Chichewa is the same word used to describe small poisonous bugs. At the end of the session, the children were shown a real photo of the virus, printed onto a t-shirt. There was general surprise. "You say that's the virus," this girl says, "but to me it looks like balloons." Most of the children said that they found the real image much less frightening than their imagined monsters. One girl even described it as beautiful, like a flower. All the children in this club need to know their status and to have guardian consent before they can attend. In many cases, healthcare workers spend a lot of time encouraging guardians to disclose to their children.
The guardian knows, the parent knows, but cannot talk about HIV to the child, being afraid that maybe the child will commit suicide, maybe the child will be depressed, and maybe the child will ask questions whereby the guardian cannot answer, or maybe the child, if is aware about his or her status, will go out and be telling others.
When they start to ask questions, children need truthful explanations they can understand. But for many parents, this poses a dilemma. Janie is 7 years old. She is HIV positive and on treatment, and starting to ask questions. Janie's mother wants to start to tell her why she is taking medicines, but she is very worried.
It's easy for her to just refuse because she doesn't know why is she taking the drugs every day. So she'll just say, "No, I don't want to take them today." So it's very hard to convince her to take them that day. If she says no, then that means it will take you maybe even hours for her to accept that I should take the drugs. I still feel that there are people out there who don't really understand what's going on. Maybe should still meet people that would stigmatize her in a way that she won't be able to handle. So I still felt I should protect her until maybe she's 3 years older than she is now.
Her mother is also worried that if she partially discloses without naming HIV, at school, Janie may well guess that she is HIV positive.
I've read some books that says HIV kills and stuff like that. I think those messages are very wrong. She's going to meet those books. In standard 3, she's going to find those books. And maybe if I decide to tell her, and then she's going to find out that those books are written, AIDS kills, you should prevent from it, and then you have it. I think she's going to feel like, I'm going to die. I mean, maybe life is not even worth it. What am I doing? And she's going to get confused. You feel very bad. You ask yourself, okay, why my child? Maybe it's my fault. Maybe if I hadn't done that, maybe if I hadn't done this.
Peer support groups like this Teens Club are now popular all over Africa to provide the knowledge young people need to live with HIV. This is the club that Innocencia attended.
It really helped me with the life skills program that we are being taught during the teen club meeting, that to be HIV positive is not the end of your life. You can live in even up to 50 years of age as long as you are taking your drugs adherently. Yeah.
I think I might have said 80 or 90 years rather than 50, but the point is that knowledge provided at Teens Club was, in essentia, the key to avoiding a deeper crisis. The reality is that most HIV-positive African children don't get the benefit of attending peer support groups, often for the same reasons they are not taken for testing. Family or guardians don't want children to attend a club which will identify them as being HIV positive. So young people have to cope without the essential knowledge that they need.
We were incredibly surprised amongst the groups that we were speaking to, up to 18 years old, didn't know how they would have acquired HIV. And that question kind of burnt a hole in them in terms of how significant it was, how difficult it was to find any information and who to even ask. And the shame that came with that confusion really, really coloured everything else going forward in terms of learning to live with and manage HIV. Incredibly difficult to even consider sharing that with anybody else if you don't understand it yourself.
I was crying. I was thinking to hang myself.
Gloria did not go to Teens Club after finding out she had HIV. Now in her early 20s, she drew these images of her thoughts as a frightened, angry, and suicidal 15-year-old. Without enough information and support, she stopped taking her medication.
I thought I should not be the only one to die. I slept with 2 other men who were arrogant with me. I did not want to tell them. I now regret that a lot, and I ask the Lord to forgive me.
But of course, it does not have to be like this.
They told me the result it was positive. I was not even shocked.
This is Brian, who lives in Harare. Like me, he was born with HIV. His mother gradually taught him all he needed to know before telling him that they are both HIV positive.
We then had to accept it because she's my mother. I cannot stigmatize, I cannot discriminate, and she's the one who I'm staying with her, so I just have to love her. So it became easy for me to accept my status as well because I knew it came from the parents.
Brian is now completely open about his status, leading community discussions and using his story as an example. He says much of his self-confidence comes from the way he found out that he has HIV.
I knew if I was going to ask why has it happened to me, it was going to affect me. Same applies with my peers at school. I didn't pay very much attention to what they said. I just remained Brian. I told myself, I am what I am. It is what it is. That's all I can do.
While peer support groups are increasingly popular, they cannot resolve everything. The children here often said that finding out they are HIV positive raised a barrier between themselves and their HIV negative peers at school.
Yeah, my chances were in a car now.
It is like we go to Teens Club to unlearn what we have learned at school and elsewhere. The barrier is that only those who are HIV positive can access information at the Teens Club, while the incorrect and partial information delivered at school is accessible to everyone.
It was creating some part of discrimination because they were believing different things. This one believing that HIV kills. This one says HIV positive is not a problem.
The big difference between Africa and the UK, where I grew up, is the size of the epidemic. HIV isn't widely spoken about in the UK, and as far as I know, I was the only person at my school with HIV. The clinic was my main source of information, allowing them to gradually build up my knowledge over time and only put the HIV label at the very end.
These Malawian children, by contrast, have grown up in a much bigger epidemic, with talk of HIV all around them. Many have family who have died. As soon as you start telling them they are taking pills for a virus, it's easy for them to work out that they have HIV.
So we've seen how different things can be depending on how and when you're told about your HIV status. The ideal long-term solution would be for children in schools to have the same education as HIV-positive children. This means a change is needed in prevention messages. It means changing the way that we teach all kids about HIV.